Boom! What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Mount Mograph. As always, my name's Matt. Sorry for not posting a video in a little bit. I actually got a little puppy and he's taken way more time than I expected. But anyway, welcome back. Today we have Summit 65, 10 After Effects secrets, and these secrets are totally loosely defined. They are things you might not have ever known about or just things you never used. So anyway, I'm going to jump right into it here. The very first one on the list is caching the work area in the background, which is something you might not use all the time, but when you do use it, it is a lifesaver. So I'm going to go ahead and just go up and click edit and go down to purge all memory and disk cache, just to prove that this actually works. So as you can see, my timeline, all the preview is wiped away. So I'm going to go ahead and just preview this. Everyone's had that moment where you're sitting at your computer and you're just watching your animation playback in about 1 frame per second. So this can take a lot of time whenever you have render intensive frames. And this is just from an old project of mine. I don't know how render intensive it is. But as you can see, you're just sitting here waiting. And while you're waiting, you're not really being productive unless you're making a storyboard or something. So caching the work area in the background is a great way to actually work on your project and also not have to just watch your animation playback super slow. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go show you where this all is, and I'm going to go ahead and just stop this. And once again, I'm going to go up and purge the disk cache just so we can go right from the beginning here. So all memory and disk cache, purging that, and let that wipe away. So what this does is you select any comp you have in your project manager, and you can cache the work area in the background. So you can either select it by going up into your composition and go down to cache work area in background, or you can press Command Enter. Additionally, you can just find it over here, right click and go down to cache work area in background. So let's go ahead and take a look how this works. So first what I'm going to do is just click in here, and you can select as many comps as you want. So you can go through your animation and see what comps might be kind of render intensive. So I selected these couple just as an example, all with the GA in the front. So I'm going to type GA into my little finder here, and I'm going to grab all of these. So what I'm going to do is right click and go down to cache work area in background. And as you can see in our info, it's going to have 8 jobs, 7 jobs waiting, 6 jobs waiting, and all these projects are open. So I'll show you how this is cool. So I'm going to let those load, and then I'm going to go over here and grab this one. So right click, reveal layer source and project, and there it is. I'm going to right click it and cache the work area in background as well. And so we're just going to wait for that to pop up in our info. All of these have been opened, and now that one is also open. So from there, you can go ahead and just open up a new composition here and start animating away. So I'm going to just go do some stupid animation and kill a little bit of time, and maybe I will just speed this up in some kind of edit after the fact so you don't have to listen. So if the video jumps, that's going to be why. But as you can see, it's going to say, give you little updates as you're animating over here about how many of the frames have been rendered. So rendered frame 87 or 125 of 319, and so on. So here is the speed up, and I'll see you in a second. All right, so we are back here. And just in a second, you're going to see that the info panel is not popping up those updates anymore about how many frames have been rendered. But the only project I've been working in is this composition right here. So as you can see, it's a fantastic animation. And well, basically I was working on a project and I had a whole bunch of compositions rendering. So let's say I want to go look at my playback. I'm going to go ahead and click into my background cache tester, click in here, and you're still not going to see anything. But when you click into the compositions like this, you're going to see that I have all these previewed frames that I never actually played back, which is really cool. So how this ends up helping you is when you go to actually see your animation, you're going to see that the playback is already happening, even if these were render intensive with expressions and all that. So the frames that were cached in the background are shown up as these blue frames right here. So it's really cool to kind of go through a project and just see those blue frames kind of pop in for you. So this can save a ton of time when you go back to actually preview an animation. You can go ahead and just go much quicker. Obviously you still have to click the preview button, but basically you're going to have a ton of those render intensive comps already previewed, so it's going to go way quicker than normal, and you'll also still be able to have worked on a composition, making progress while you go. So that's about that. I'm going to go ahead and jump to the second item on the list, which is revealing modified properties. So I'm going to go ahead and just draw a quick little shape here, and everyone knows that you can find the keyframe properties by pressing U on your keyboard pretty easily. So I'm just going to go ahead, toggle down, set a keyframe on maybe these two options, and if I go ahead and just press U, there are my keyframe properties. Really easy to find. So if you double tap U, it'll reveal all modified properties, which is a really helpful command that I'm finding I use more and more lately. So let me go ahead and delete this layer and change some of these values. I'll change that, and I guess we'll call that good. So what this command does is basically shows you the defaults, or what the object was originally created with when you use this command. So sometimes you don't keyframe properties and you just get handed a project and you want to bring everything back to default. You don't know what was changed, but you didn't set a keyframe. So I'm going to go ahead and change my stroke width here a little bit, and I'll change things that are kind of subtle, and maybe change my position, and I'll change my rotation a little bit. So I get handed this project, and I guess that's what I got. So that looks great, I guess. And for all I know, I press U and I don't see any keyframes, so I guess this was the actual starting position. So you can either double tap U and you'll see the changed properties, or the modified properties, or you can go up here and click animation, reveal all modified properties, and that's going to pull up all the stuff that was changed from its default values on its creation. So if I go ahead and do Command Z, you're going to see that all my subtle little changes on my position and my rotation and my stroke width pop up there with no problem. So that's just a really easy way to kind of bring yourself back to default, or just see what was actually changed, and go from there, or set a keyframe on it, whatever you wanted to do. So next up on the list, we have a really frustrating, really cool, and really hard to use tool called AutoTrace. So this is something that is very vague with what you're actually supposed to do, but eventually you find the sweet spot and it's a lot of fun. So this sits up in your layer, and it's right down here as AutoTrace. And honestly, it's hardly ever used, but I think it's worth exploring because it's just an interesting and fun tool. So I downloaded just 3 random files from the internet, a GIF, an MP4, and an even lower res MP4. And let's go ahead and see what this AutoTrace does. So I'm going to drop this into a composition. This is just a random little GIF I found online real quick. If I find the artist, I will link him or her below. Right now I'm not sure who it is, so sorry about that. But as you can see, we have this little looping animation. And what AutoTrace does is it's similar to what the image trace does in Illustrator. It'll actually trace the video content that you have playing if you can hit the sweet spot of these settings. So let's go ahead and see what's going on. So if you go into your layer and go down to Auto Trace, you're going to see we get a whole bunch of options. Typically, I like to leave it on work area. Current frame will just grab like the single frame like an image trace would do in Illustrator. The channel I would recommend leaving it on is Luminance. That seems to work best, but you know, play around a little bit and you'll find it out. And typically turn off blur to start, because that's where things can really just throw you out of whack. So you turn off blur there, and make sure you have preview on, otherwise you're really flying in the dark. So this is where you just start playing around a ton. And I'll also show you a little hack to kind of make sure that this effect picks up a little bit better than it normally would. So basically you can play around with these numbers. Don't spend too much time on an image at first, because then we'll jump over to the hack. But basically you're looking for colored masks to pop up on here because we have the preview selected. So just with playing around a little bit, I'm pretty sure we're not going to get anything. So let's go ahead and just click cancel. And the effect we're going to throw on this to make it kind of work a little bit better is something called Find Edges, which everyone sooner or later kind of clicks and throws onto a, an object and then immediately takes off, because it doesn't really make things look too good for actual animation. But for getting this auto trace thing to work, it's a really helpful little tool. So if you go up into layer with your object selected and go down to auto trace one more time here, you're going to see that actually that already is picking up better. So we have all these little colored masks that are sitting in here, and they're really separated. So your goal to get this to work great is to get as the least amount of colors you can in your image, so you have like a better mask. So recommend playing with the tolerance first, and I'm actually going to turn that blur off because that always messes things up. So I'm going to knock this down to let's call it 1 and just see what kind of changes we get. So I actually got lucky somehow getting those sweet spot numbers right off the bat, and I might turn my minimum area up a little bit, so the mask has to be a little bit bigger. And as you can see, this is actually looking pretty dang solid. So depending on what kind of object you have, the corner roundness is kind of self-explanatory. This is like a snake or something. So I'm going to turn my corner roundness up a little bit and try to really smooth that mask out. And as you can see, there's our colors there. And then threshold is, well, just playing up with how well it picks up. So, and then also make sure it's applied to a new layer. Otherwise, you're putting it on the layer that already exists. But basically that should do it. And then once you're kind of happy with your settings and you have a mask, it's not a bad idea to check what the blur will do. Sometimes it'll help smooth out what auto trace finds. I'm gonna put it at 2 and see if that makes anything better. It looks like it smoothed out those colors down there. So I'm gonna say okay, and we'll see what we get. No guarantees. I'm gonna click okay. You're gonna see that auto trace has finished, and it has given me nothing very good. I have a bit of a trace with these 2 masks, but we could probably do better. So I'm gonna go ahead and do Command Z, click my trace test GIF one more time, go down to layer auto trace, and let's just turn that blur off and see if that helps out. So I'm going to click OK, and this time it looks like it's picked up a lot more for our object. As you can see here, we actually have a mask that looks somewhat like the object we're trying to get, and it looks like it actually did a pretty good job. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete this bottom GIF that we just traced. And I'm going to press 0 for a RAM preview, and you're going to see that we actually have somehow magically traced our object just like that. And if you go ahead and press U on your keyboard to see all the keyframes, you're going to see that it's generated a ton of masks and objects that you can actually change. Like you can go and grab these and actually go ahead and change your animation once you have traced it, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to go ahead and just once again preview it, and that just ruined the animation. But if you have the patience, auto trace is really fun. I'm going to go ahead and just do another quick test with, I guess, this paint splatter. I will throw that into a new composition. We could do that one. We also have a 1 gallon paint thing. This was kind of funny. So let's go with this. This looks like Pepto-Bismol. So I'm just going to make this work area a little bit less so auto trace will go a little quicker. And since this is in a really, really low resolution image, it's 480 by 270, it's not going to be too easy to work with just standard. So I'm going to throw the find edges on it right away. And as you can see, it's already found the edges a little bit better for us just as a starting point. So let's go up into our layer one more time and down to auto trace. And if you guys aren't too bored and can work with me for a second, actually looks like our previous numbers actually did a pretty decent job finding stuff. So when you do this effect, you normally don't want it to get these borders, as you can see here, but it's picked up a lot of other stuff in this image. So I'm going to go ahead and click blur and maybe put this up a little bit. And as you can see, that actually helped out in this case. It looks like it really cleaned up the image for us. So I'm going to click OK, and let's just see what we get, and we can kind of go from there. As you can see in your info, it's auto tracing, and it'll just trace the duration of your work area. So we have to go another 3 seconds here, and it's actually going super quick for what it does. So I'm going to go ahead and just hide that original layer, and let's see what the auto trace did. So this is super creepy. But we're definitely starting to get somewhere with it. So I'm going to just do 2 more seconds here, since you're probably a little bit bored thus far with this effect, but it's pretty fun to play around with if you have the patience. So I'm going to go to layer auto trace, and actually this time we'll keep the blur off, and I'm actually going to play with the threshold here, and that actually cleaned up more than the blur did, and maybe make my minimum area bigger. Once again, no guarantees. I'm going to do a quick auto trace, turn my corner roundness down, and we'll see what we get. So it's tracing last time, I promise, and we'll just see what it does. But this one should be kind of interesting if we can get it to work. Probably should have picked some high resolution images. It would probably do a better time. working with it, but it probably also be a lot slower. So let's go ahead and just hide our background and check this out. So this actually did an awesome job. This is all mask paths that you can go ahead, change the color, change the animation, which is really incredible. This looks like some kind of Frank Miller animation. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea of what you can kind of do with auto trace. If you find some really cool footage that you want to somehow integrate or just change. But if we press U, you're going to see we have, well, more keyframes than I could have ever imagined it would have caught. But you can change all of these, and you can change the color as well. I would probably recommend throwing a fill on there, and we'll see. That should work, or it might get everything. Well, it looks like it's changing the background, but there we go. We have this awesome little cell animation looking water effect, which that actually looks super cool. So anyway, that is the auto trace feature. Sorry for the length of this one, but like I said, there's no like settings that are perfect all the time. So play around with it and you should have fun. Next up on our list of fun little tools in After Effects you might not have ever used is something called the Warp Stabilizer, which is totally fantastic and probably is one of the most used tools or effects that I use for video footage, because no matter how you shoot it, it's always a little bit shaky, and this thing is just awesome, especially when you're working with higher res footage. So with that said, I have some not high res footage that is, I think, 720p of just somebody running on a GoPro. And I'm just going to preview it, and you're going to see that it is pretty shaky. And this is playing back in real time, and honestly, that would get pretty sickening to watch long term, especially when you have like these really nice smooth shots that you want to have for like a cinematic movie or something. You don't want to have all the little shakes or something if someone even bumps the camera. So what you can do is you can right click your video layer, go down to this option called Warp Stabilizer VFX, and let's just let it do the default, and we'll check out what it does. And this actually goes super quick, especially because it's lower res footage, which is why I ended up using it. But we're already at 75%, so just another second here. And there we go. There's our stabilization. So let me go ahead and play it. And obviously the footage was shaky and to begin with, but you're going to see that all of a sudden our footage is not nearly as bad. And this is just with the default settings. So I'm going to go ahead, duplicate this layer, and then just remove the effect. So this is a before and after. This is before and this is after. So how this little tool works is it scales up your footage. So the auto scale is up to 141%, as you can see right here. And you can change all this stuff. You can go into advanced features, and you can also turn up something called smoothness, which will smooth out your footage more, but also it'll scale in a little bit more. So now when you play it, you're gonna really have a much more stable footage. This is not the best footage to use once again, but this should give you an idea for somebody just running through a rocky trail with all kinds of bumps. The footage is relatively smooth, and actually it looks a lot better, in my opinion. And there's a couple different modes you can get into, but honestly, the default normally works great. So once again, a before and after. And it also fixes like the horizon line. You'll probably see, so here's the horizon is kind of insane right now, but if I go to the after, it looks a lot better. It tries to straighten it out, and obviously you're going to push it on your footage, but when you shoot in a higher resolution like 6K or 4K, that loss is really not that bad. So once again, the Warp Stabilizer VFX, if you don't use it, it's really cool. Alright, so next up is absolutely essential if you are ever handing off a project, and this is something called collecting dependencies, which saves you a lot of time before the handoff. So I have a project over here, my project manager. It's already sorted into a couple different things, but as we all know, when you work with any After Effects projects, you go through tons of stuff. You have images, you have footage, you have image sequences, and you even have vector files. So when you're handing this off to another person to work on, or just want to save it and archive it or something, you might not have all the time in the world to collect all the files or find all the crazy places you ended up saving them. So After Effects has this fantastic tool called collecting dependencies. So I've already had this sorted, but it'll also save it into the folders you have. So this project right here is kind of a throwback. It's that hipster video from forever ago. But I only have the one vector file in here, but let's say I can't find it and I just want to, like, you know, save myself some time and just hand this project off real quick. So if you go up into File and go down to Dependencies and Collect Files, that's what we're going to do. So right now it says collect source files none, the project only. So this might not have been used in the project, but I still want it. So I'm going to go down and just click all. So I want to grab everything. And now it says one file is going to be collected because I only had the one file there. So let's go ahead and add a comment. Like if you're handing this off and someone needs to know, I'm going to say super great project. If I can type super great project, did awesome, I guess. So I'm going to click OK. So there we go. We have that. Reveal collected project in Finder. Pretty self-explanatory. And let's just click collect. Depending on the size of your project, obviously it'll be slower. So this is going to save into a folder. So I'm just going to call this new handoff or something. And I'll save that. There we go. It's copying all the files for us. So all your originals are going to be still intact. And it's opened up the handoff thing. So here's my folder on my desktop. I've got a saved file. And all the links are going to be proper. I have this little report text here, and here's my comment. Super great project, did awesome, and all the different things that I used in here, which is sometimes helpful if they don't have a certain plugin or effect. And if you click in your footage, you're going to see that I actually have the sorted folder over here with my required file. So this will collect everything from audio, images, sequences, or video, or anything. But when you're handing it off, it's so much easier to just save it to the desktop or save it wherever and then just compress it and send it off and be on your way instead of having to like make sure you find all your folders yourself. Why not automate the task? So another super cool tool that I've more and more started to use more and more is something called a proxy, which a lot of people do know, a lot of people don't know, and a lot of people don't even bother using. But I think it's really helpful, especially when you start working with all these crazy high resolutions that are now like standards, like 4K and 6K. So I have, once again, another little throwback project, just the little 1080p one, but just for the example. So as you can see, it is previewing, and let's see, so it's playing back in real time, but let's pretend it's not. And so this is like, you know, scrubbing through it is just not in real time, and that's kind of hard to work with. So if we go up into a project manager and just find the source here, and we're going to right click and just say create proxy, and we want to make a proxy movie because that's a movie. I'm gonna just save this to my desktop here. I guess it's called Sexy Text, and I'm gonna just go ahead and render this out. So once it's rendered, it's gonna be all set up as like a custom little setting for you, and it's going to auto link for you over here. You're going to notice that in your project manager you now have a little square next to this thing that was like auto imported for you. So if I pull over my project, you're going to see we have two things. We have our fast text, which is our original file, 1920 by 1080. It's got millions of colors, blah blah blah. And then we have our sexy text that we just rendered out, which is a proxy, which is 960 by 540. So if we go ahead and look at the size here, when the proxy is being used, you're going to see that this box is like filled in, and if you unclick it, you're going to see that it's not filled in. So the size just went up, and that means that we're using our bigger file, and if we click it, it's going down. So this is helpful when you do have these higher resolution files or something, or image sequences or red footage that's really a lot of gigs, like 9 gigs for a video. You're not going to get real-time playback, but if you create a proxy, you're going to have a smaller file, so when you're using it, you're going to be able to scrub through in real time, which is fantastic when you're just trying to build the rest of the project. So as you can see, I'm using the proxy. And as you're probably going to be able to notice, you're going to have a little bit of a blur around the edges. Obviously, it's a lower quality and a lower bit rate. And when I turn it back on, it kind of clears up. So you're not going to want to render out with a proxy, but if you're just looking for speeding up your like timeline workflow and maybe making your project just RAM preview or something a little bit faster, go ahead and use the proxies. I think they're really, really helpful. And as you can see, it's kind of fun to toggle this. So why not use proxies? So yet another really cool little feature of After Effects you may or may not have used is the rulers and snapping to the rulers to align stuff. So if you do Command R on your keyboard or go up into View or and pull down the rulers, you can actually pull out guides just like you would in really any other Adobe program. And so now that you have these guides, what would you do with them? Well, if you go and create an object, so I'm just going to make a cube and drag it around. Let's say we want that, and maybe we want to duplicate this, and we want this to like be exactly aligned to the other one. Sometimes they can be a little bit hard if you're just eyeballing it, and you can maybe use the rulers a little bit and try to just match it up with your eye. But if you go up here and you click this option called snapping and click this little button here that says snap along the edges of layer boundaries and stuff, you can actually feel a snap. It's kind of hard to show in the video, but it'll snap into place, and it just makes placing your objects so much easier. You can also snap to like the guides you made, and it's just nice. So I recommend checking that out a little bit if you haven't. And then to get rid of these, you just actually drag them back onto the ruler, which is kind of cool. I used to try to delete them. Don't do that, they don't go anywhere. So this option is probably going to make a couple of you laugh because it seems really stupid, but if you're anything like me, I really hate that render sound that Adobe makes whenever you're done rendering a composition. You know, the super loud that always blows out your speakers and makes you jump. I had to find a way to turn that off, and luckily there is, and that is up in After Effects Preferences. Click General, and down at the bottom, obviously this is unchecked for me, play sound when render finishes. Check that off if you want to save your sanity and your speakers. And as dumb as that is, that's another little secret that often goes unnoticed. The final two little secrets of After Effects are kind of silly once again, but they can definitely be helpful. So in the graph editor, everyone's favorite thing, I try not to go there too often, but obviously you can look at your graph, and so zooming out, you can press Z and then Alt, and you can click out, and then you can also hold Z and you can frame up your composition. But a cool little thing is actually if you hold Alt and just move around your mouse, you can resize by going left or right, up or down, which is really a nice way to just go quick on your timeline or look around. Additionally, you can hold space just like for your hand tool here, and that also works for scrubbing through your graph editor if you didn't know that. And then the final little one, I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate a bajillion of these real quick, is you can use your hand tool for these layers. So whenever you have a ton of layers here, it's kind of hard to scroll through. Sometimes it gets a little jittery on you and it's hard to read, and you can use this guy over here, which is kind of the same deal. So I like to use my hand tool actually and just go through like this, which you kind of forget is there, at least I do. So I think that's helpful to use as well. So those are the 10 little secrets you may or may not have known about After Effects. Hopefully you learned something today, and hopefully you can use one of them in an upcoming project, or at least look at it and get frustrated and never use it again, like the auto trace. Anyway, thanks for checking out Mount MoGraph. As always, you rock, and happy Monday now, but happy Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, whenever you are watching the video, if you do. Peace out. Thanks.